Okay, first I'm going to create a new Firebase project to host my ourChecklists project. So I've gone to the Firebase homepage here. I'm already signed in under my Google account, so I'll go to console, and an option I have there is add a project. So I'm going to add a project. The name of my project will be ourChecklists. I'm going to enable Google Analytics. It's always good to have, and I have an account out there I can just add this to, and it's going to run through and create my project. Okay, my project's created, so I can continue. I'm now in ourChecklists, and the next thing I want to do is add an application to it. So I'm going to go to my project, go to project settings, and click down here to create a web application. I'm going to call this one ourChecklists. I'm going to add hosting because I always use hosting with it. I'll register it. And I should be all ready to go. So these things I'll do down in actual project I bring down from GitHub. So we're good. And down here I'm going to need the config settings. So if I click here, this gives me the config settings that I'm going to use over in the actual Angular application. I'm also going to create a Firestore database. And I'll start it in production mode. Your Essential looks good. Okay, I've got an empty Firestore database. Also, for authentication, I'm going to add some sign-in methods. So I want to add Google. Let me enable that. I want email. Okay, so I've got two authentications set up. Now my Firebase should be all ready to go for putting my project into. I can make adjustments to it later on as I go on. Okay, now over to GitHub. So I'm going to clone my fbmStarter. So I'm going to first copy it, set up as a template. So I can just go down here and say use this template. And I'm going to call it ourChecklists. We look good, so let's create the repository. That's good. I got a new repository based on the fbmStarter. I'm going to get the cloning information and bring that down to my Visual Studio Code, Visual Code environment. Okay, I'm now in Visual Studio Code, just opened it up, and what I'm going to do is Control-Shift-P to bring up the command window, and I want to do a git clone, and I'm going to put in that URL I got from GitHub. Hit enter. It allows me where I want to put it, so I put all my projects in a projects file. So let's open that up, and so we now have our ourChecklists project in Visual Studio Code down on my desktop ready to go. So I'm going to finish off making the changes that are described in the fbmStarter notes. Now I'm going to do a global replace, so it tells me in the fbmStarter instructions I'm going to change wherever I see fbmStarter to the new project name. So I'll do an edit, replace in files, look for fbmStarter and change it to that's good. So let's replace all those. And it also tells me for wherever I see fbm-starter, I'm going to change it to the underscore version of the new project name, but without capitals. So let's get the new search string, and it'll be our dash lowercase checklists. So let's replace all those. So we're good. Let's do the npm I to load all the libraries. So I'm going to do a control back quote, and I'll just go into command, and I'm going to do a npm I. Let's go through and load all the libraries. After that I'll also go into the functions directory and do an NPI for that as well. So let's let all this run through. So I'm adding all the packages for the functions folder as well. That's good. I'm also going to get the config for my Firebase project that I created earlier, and in my project that will be in the used in the environment. So I'll just replace this one, which was the fbmStarter version, to my new one. So I'll be pointing at the updated Firebase instance. It's good. Do a save on those. Now I'm going to do a ng build prod. This will just kind of sanity check that everything's hanging together. So I'll let this run through. Hopefully we get a successful build. Okay, so the production build made it through without anything too horrible happening. So now I'm going to do a ng serve also, just to make sure the code I brought over from fbmStarter is working in this new project, and that the replaces and things I've done hasn't messed anything up. So that's encouraging. So started up okay. It's still showing the splash screen from fbmStarter, so I need to now update that with the material that I'd already put together in the old ourChecklists. Okay, some of the other changes I had to make to just get started on getting the fbmStarter to look more like ourChecklists should look. Still no real ourChecklists specific functionality added. So first, one thing I missed out last time was in Firebase RC, I had to change the project designation. So this is how it links up to Firebase using the Firebase CLI to know which project I'm using. I had to change the default project to our lowercase checklists. Didn't like having the uppercase checklists name when I was using Firebase. So that was done. Next thing I did was get a set of icons. So these are used to generate the manifest icons for a PWA. So the actual icon looks like this, but in varying sizes. You see the size shown here as well. Simple way to generate it is I got the first icon as a 512 by 512 PNG. So you see it here. And then I used this utility, so basically pulled in the 512 by 512 PNG as my base generator icon. Then I do a generate zip, which makes a downloadable file with a whole set of icons in it of the various sizes needed by the manifest. The one that's missing is a 48 by 48, which is used on iPhones. I think to show the desktop icon. So I also had to grab one of these and resize it down to 48 by 48 to have my complete icon set. The other thing I did was make images and icons for my home page. So some of these I just grabbed from assets that I had from the old ourChecklists. So you see these look fairly familiar, look like the old ones. And I needed them in sizes of 1200 by 500 and 400 by 300. So these are used in the carousel on the home page and get resized depending on the size of the device that the user's viewing on. So something like an iPhone would look at 400 by 300, use those JPEGs, whereas if you're looking at using a PC, it's going to use the full size ones probably. I also needed some icons for used on the card on the home page, so I created 3 of those. I think that's most of the image assets I need. So let's go into the home page. So this is where I updated the HTML. So the home page, and this just comes from fbmStarter, is made up with a carousel. It's a Angular version of a carousel. So that needs the two sizes of images for each carousel image, the large size and the smaller size. And needed 3 of them because I'm showing 3 images in the carousel. And also under that I have the various cards that talk about the main functionality in the system as well. So updated most of the text here from the text that was in the old ourChecklists as well. One thing I did change was some of the text around community, changed it to being about teams, but not a lot of changes so far there. I'll probably go back and refine it as I work on the functionality. So that's most of what was needed in the home page. Also in the styles, just to be aware, I had to update the styles as well, these card 1, 2 and 3 images to match the 3 images that I showed earlier. And the last thing I updated was the index page. So the index page is the initial page that gets loaded before any of the other Angular content gets loaded. So it's kind of like the initial splash screen, just gives the user something to see before the full-blown application download. So it looks like it started up very quickly. And in there, it uses those icons from the manifest. As well, it has a little bit of text saying what application you're looking at. So that's all done. So now if I do a ng serve and we have a look at the application. So let's open that up. So you see the splash screen with the icon that I added to the manifest, and now I'm in the new home page, and you see that it's got a carousel there. It's got the various cards underneath. It's set up to be a applications that change the interface depending on what devices it's running on. So if I change it to this device toggler and make it look more like a cell phone aspect ratio, you see everything was changed here. It's using the smaller carousel icon images now rather than the wide ones. So you see there's changes there, and the cards underneath reflow for the smaller width of this device. So that looks like it's all working. Again, no real functionality here. This is just the splash screen or the home page. I still need to work out how I'm going to do menus. I'm going to have a sit down and look at my functionality that I'm going to include in this version and think about what components I'm going to need, and corresponding to those components, what routes am I going to need. And because this is team oriented and there's going to be visibility rules and access rules about who can get to what, I'm also going to look at what route guards I need to put in place. So I'll probably work my way up through that first before I get a lot of the pages that actually have the functionality on them added, or the components added for the specific functionality. So sort of that architectural work is stuff I'll need to do first, but that's next up for my blogs.